Right, Nissar. I'm getting your name right.
No,
Nissar.
no, Nissar.
Were you born in the United Kingdom? Were you?
Paul, I'm born and raised in Birmingham. 1965. I'm from a Pakistani Mirpuri heritage, so I'm the firstborn to Pakistani immigrant parents. Born and raised in Birmingham.
Was this a Muslim area you were born into?
No, not at all. It was obviously compared to now. No, not of sorts. We grew up with English, Irish, Jamaican. It was it wasn't.
And how would you describe your childhood? Was it pleasant or was it difficult?
My childhood was very pleasant. It's full of amazing memories. Mm. Yeah, we kind of in the what would you say, early 70s, round about there. You had to look out for some of these mindless idiots.
Were your parents practicing Muslims, were they?
Well, they're under the banner of a Muslim, and I would say I was British far sooner before I realised what being a Muslim was. But it was just looking back, it was very jovial, it was relaxed, it was amazing, it was almost like a carnival atmosphere.
Did you go to madrasa to learn the Quran?
No, I no such word, never knew where a madrasa was. Looking back at that time, you had maybe a house or an extended house joined together, converted into like a mosque room, extended mosque room, you know. There wasn't any such thing as dome-shaped mosques, you know, growing up, 70s, 80s, you know, and so there was.
So you went into your teenage years, and did you become a practicing Muslim? Did you believe in the Islamic faith?
Yeah, we just went along. I should imagine like any other faith, Sikh, Hindu, Christian, Catholic. You'd go along. You know, after school, it was incumbent upon you to go along as a 9-10-year-old, and as much as I didn't prefer to go along and play with my mates, but we did, and it's just following a rigmarole, a pattern.
It was a culture that you were born into.
It's a cultural thing, yes. So
now, did you challenge that culture at any stage? Were you attracted by anything else?
I would say I challenged it sort of in my early teens because. One of many occasions I would come back rubbing my backside where I'd been whipped with a bamboo stick, you know, or sort of ears would be red raw because I'd been yanked and pulled around, you know, this room for not learning my Quranic scriptures. And so I resented that fact. It was abuse, actually, and I saw many other children copying it. And it was quite, looking back, you know, distressing and traumatizing.
So did you actually start to rebel against the Islamic faith?
There was definitely a questioning going on. I just, on such an episode, I'd go away and I'd resent the fact that I'd been whipped and kicked or slapped, or ears pulled and yanked, and I'd complain to my mother bitterly, and she would say, well, you know, it's good for you and you should learn your Quran, which, by the way, didn't mean nothing to myself. I couldn't make out one jot of it. It was sort of ancient Arabic that you're taught and you learn to read, but you go along reading the Quran, which I read 4 or 5 times, and it didn't mean anything whatsoever.
Now, at the age of 15, you were drawn to the Christian faith.
I was, Paul, yes. It was through a school friend, an ex-Bover boy, sort of Mohican hairstyle, tattooed, you know, quite a rough and tumble sort of lad, actually, hard as nails, streetwise. And he'd go away, you know, playing truant, working the bull ring, the markets, the rag trade, whatever. Every so often he'd get collared, brought back into the classroom, and by the authorities. And on one such occasion, you know, a few years along the line, he comes back into school, and I nearly fell off my chair. And I think most of us Pakistani lads in the classroom, there's only a handful of us in the whole of the classroom, he was openly prior quite racist, and you would use racist language, and you know, he would intimidate and sort of, you know, tell you what he thought about X, Y, and Z, and you know, and anyway, he was on this occasion totally civilized, Mohican hairstyle gone, civilized haircut, if you like, parted, brush back, tattoos covered.
Being a transformation.
Ear piercing gone. Nope, it was a complete transformation that blew me away. And honestly, believe it or not, what I gleaned from that, it has to be the power of God, because he would be reading the Bible, which I came to know as the Bible, prior to which I heard of, but I didn't know what the Bible was, and very approachable, and actually very calm and collected. And
so you were curious about what power had brought about this transformation?
Extremely curious. That he told me in an encounter, he's a born-again Christian, and I said, what's a born-again Christian? So we would have many conversations, and then he imparted to me a Gideon New Testament, which we're taught that it's false, it's a lie of the devil, and just war is taboo. And I kind of put it in my blazer pocket, and I took it home, and I hid it on my mattress, and of an evening I would read it zealously. So I read the Gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, and by the Spirit of God, as we believe now, the Holy Spirit, I believe that there was a revelation that I realised there and then in my bedroom, that Jesus Christ was the Son of God, that he came into the world to die for my sins and was seated at the right hand of God, and through him we had everlasting life and salvation. So
you joined a church, you got baptised?
No, Paul, I was a very secret believer, and at that time I was convinced I was the only convert in the world. I didn't even know what the word convert meant. But what happened with actually that with these kind of riveting conversations that John said to me, would you like to meet my pastor? Some weeks down the road, and I didn't know what a pastor was, so he explained to me what a pastor was, and I then ended up meeting his pastor, Pastor Joseph Batoy. And the second most amazing thing that blew me away was when I met Pastor Joseph, he was a Sikh gentleman from a Sikh background. He was a son of a Gurdwara priest, and who'd come to faith.
So he was a convert himself.
He was a convert himself, and I just saw this wonderful gospel message transcending to every kind of creed, even though he was Indian, at that time. But and Pastor Joseph would start off with a hymn or a song and on his guitar, and actually then he would read scripture, expound the word, and he would be very open to any questions which we had. And it wasn't before long actually that through him that I did, we have a confession of faith, and I ended up being baptised by him in his bathroom actually, again because there wasn't this setup in the very early 80s.
Did you share the fact that you'd been baptised with your family or with the Muslim community?
Not at all. It was the most secret of all secrets, and actually so I still gave the impression, largely because of the peer pressure, realising the consequences. I didn't know what they were, but I knew they would be very, very serious, and that I couldn't, just come out with the fact. And it was just a no. And so what happened is that I went along for several months or so, and I remember waking up one Saturday morning. I know it was the weekend because I woke up a bit later, and as soon as my bedroom door opened, my mum was shrieking, screaming, tearing the place down, and accusing me of being a Christian. And then it dawned on me she'd found my New Testament in my bedroom. I was reading it, fell asleep with it laying on my chest, and she's come in, so you know how mothers are, to check on her favourite son, and she picked this New Testament from my chest, and she would have asked my sisters, would have said, oh my God, look at this, he's got a New Testament.
Did she report you to the mosque?
No, she even worse, she said she'd report me to my father, and that was enough to instill the fear of God in me, being a big man, 6'4", wow, ruling with a rod of iron, and actually not a man to be messed around with. And so actually, as a result of which, I fell away from the fellowship that I started attending soon after my secret baptism, and we would meet with others, others Sikh, young men, and in Pastor Joseph's house, which wasn't that far from my home at the time, in Birmingham. And but I fell away from the fellowship, meeting with Christians, and then we use the word, don't we, backslidden. So I went back into the world, so to speak, in a backslidden state, and so that was.
So what reignited your faith in later life?
Okay, so if we fast forward to 1990, I'd moved to Bradford. I'd married a few years prior to that, and I literally got away from issues concerning my mum, being a typical Pakistani matriarchal mother, and this interference with my married life. It was a typical arranged marriage, and as a result of which my wife was deeply unhappy, and so we ended up going to, through invitation by some friends, to Bradford. We settled there, and 6 years after that, so in 1906, my brother Iftikhar very sadly died from acute pancreatitis. Basically, he was hooked on codeine lintus, cough mixture, which has opiates in, and unbeknown to us at the time, until after his death and the coroner's report and such like, an inquest, he'd been hooked on codeine lintus from the age of 13 up until he was 15, whereby he was fully addicted and drinking 2 pints of this stuff a day, and he battled this addiction until he literally dropped dead.
And that sort of gave you some soul searching and you came back to faith?
It certainly did, Paul. My father had semi-retired in Mirpur, Azad Kashmir, in Pakistan, and as broken as we all were, he requested that I bring back my brother's casket for burial in the family burial yard, which I duly obliged. And whilst I was there, after Iftikhar's funeral, that I made a commitment to faith. It was the most painful experience of my life, and I felt I needed God. And I then came back to Bradford to my wife, and I started attending a church through a contact. And that's how I came to, I rededicated my life to Christian faith.
This was in Bradford. You were living amongst the Muslims again. How did they respond to you being a Christian?
I broke the news to a close friend of mine, and he was Pakistani. I've never bought into this thing about community, born and raised here. However, it was a fairly strong Muslim community where I was living in that part of Bradford, although we were on the fringe of the so-called community. And so when I told him, his natural reaction was to recoil, shock, horror, in disgust. And he told me, don't ever knock on my door again.
Total rejection.
Total rejection. We are finished. And as a result of which, then he has then obviously told one or two others, and it's then gone out like wildfire. And as a result of that, we were exposed. And nothing has prepared me for the fact that we then started suffering persecution. It starts off name calling, across the road, kufr, kafir, infidel, unbeliever, in Arabic, and then it starts to escalate, gain momentum to the point I had 3 cars written off, in succession. Drive-by brickings, in other words, you couldn't sit your children next to the bay window because you didn't know when the next brick or bricks were going to come flying from.
So this is a ferocious response.
Ferocious, and these were young men that prior to which knew me, I knew them, had every respect in the world, never an issue. And it was a learning curve in the sense that I didn't realise until some time later, but I'll bring you to that point, that it is in essence you're under Sharia, which it just didn't dawn on me. It was only through this, like you say, this ferocious, contemptible response by the so-called community.
Were you terrified by this?
Terrified, I would say deeply distressed and anxious. But as a British born who believes in democracy and freedoms and religious freedoms in a country that I was born and raised in, angry that the police weren't taking any notice, and it came to the point that they were doing it with such lawlessness, with impunity. We were under siege regularly, opening our doors, stepping out. My wife would be followed, called a hua. These young men would call her all sorts of names, my children, to the school, follow her back again in cars.
So it sounds like you needed to flee from that situation.
That's right, but again, Paul, because of the British kind of endearment and the values I held, that I felt this was totally immoral. It was totally against the British way of life, democracies, freedoms, and I'd done my best to stand. Time and time again, I'd report to the police, this is because I've left Islam, and this is because of Sharia hatred. In other words, it's a cardinal sin, and but they never ever.
So what you're saying is that every Muslim in Britain, whether they want to or not, is under Sharia law in relation to apostasy?
At this moment in time, 1.6 billion adherents to the Muslim faith are under the Sharia law of apostasy, actually, as well as other laws, but certainly it is a genocidal threat. I've come to know firsthand, and of course, in this instance, and it would take me too long to express to you, car torchings and car rammings, and several times I've been attacked and fighting for my sort of my life and my children, actually, and being almost rampaged by a mob coming into my home, that I had to even pull a kitchen knife out of the stand, trying to guard my family. So I was put into the trenches, on the front line, in the most precarious of all situations.
Were they trying to break your spirit and force you to revert to Islam?
Yes, there was a reversion of Islam, break my spirit, intimidation, and also mostly to religiously cleanse me. So it's religious sectarianism, to cleanse me as per Sharia from my home.
What gave you the strength to persevere in the face of that intimidation?
I would certainly say I drew a lot of strength from my Christian faith, and I drew a lot of forgiveness, and I was always praying and hopeful for a change. But it spiraled, it snowballed out of control to such a degree that after several years of suffering and thousands of pounds worth of damage later, actually that we weren't safe walking along our house, our road, and so I had to leave. And it's culminated in the new house, the new area. If I can fast forward again, in 2015, I was brutally attacked and almost killed and kneecapped.
Wow, so this has been ongoing for that long?
It's been ongoing that long.
For a decade?
Over 18 years, Paul.
Wow.
In different parts of Bradford, concerning my own so-called Pakistani Muslim community.
How safe do you feel now?
I was marched after I suffered this brutal attack. I was kneecapped, and basically what happened, it took me several months to get back on my feet, and then a year, almost to a day, I had armed police in a SWAT operation descend my home to say that they could not leave me out of their sight because there's imminent threat to our lives, and as a result of which I then walked out of my house with my family, and I haven't been back to Bradford.
And this is all because you became a Christian?
This is all because
there's nothing else involved at all?
No, there's nothing. This is all to do with the Sharia enforcers, if you like, and me converting to Christianity.
So this horror story awaits any Muslim in this country converted to Christianity?
Absolutely, Paul, absolutely. And ex-Muslims are under a genocidal threat in this country. The government have known about this for numerous years, even highlighted by our own story, because I was so appalled by the way we were treated. I wanted people to know, and national papers got wind of the fact that we were badly, very severely persecuted, and so they came done stories with me, and so this has been out in the public domain for over 18 years, and the government have turned a blind eye. The police, Bradford police, have aided and abetted this Pakistani community to killing and annihilating us and destroying our lives, which has rendered us internally displaced. And there are many ex-Muslims that you and I, well, I know full well, but the average British person does not understand what is happening in this country for many years. We've suffered for over 18 years.
Can I just ask you in conclusion, how many Muslims do you think have actually become Christians in Britain? Gone through similar experiences?
I can't quantify the numbers, but I can tell you they're in the hundreds, perhaps thousands. Hundreds in the sense that they might have come to converting, especially the Iranian community. There's a big sort of movement of the Iranians.
Shias,
But as for the Pakistanis, what I can say, Paul, tens of thousands of disaffected ex-Muslims who have become agnostics or atheists are under this terrible genocidal threat of Sharia and cannot, for fear of losing their lives, being dispossessed, and of course suffering the consequences with their family and community, are living in abject fear in this country, up and down in the towns and cities of this green and pleasant land.
Thank you for sharing that story with us. It's truly shocking.
Please help Nissar, who today suffers from post-traumatic stress syndrome, by donating to his GoFundMe page, which can be found on the Google search engine.
We're looking for funds really to promote this work that we're doing. So if you support us and you want to invest in this battle to save our nation, there's a PayPal link in the description. If you can, please make a donation. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Ring the bell as well so you get a notification of any future videos we make. We're turning out 2, 3, 4 videos a week now, and we're going to keep on this battle until we win. Thank you.